What's up, smart homers? My name's Aaron, and in this video, I want to show you my brand new network and smart home rack that I built in 2025. Last year, I made a video where I built my first ever smart home rack, and it was on a budget, and you guys really loved that. So now I want to show you guys what you can do with premium equipment. This time I've gone taller, deeper, cleaner, and faster with a 15U 24-inch deep rack with a 10 gigabits per second full UniFi stack. If you're coming from my first video, I actually made a second video where I upgraded to UniFi, but in this video, we're going to go all out. Now, I want to be upfront with you guys right away. I did work with UniFi on this video, and they sent me quite a bit of the UniFi equipment that's in this stack. And yes, it is pretty expensive equipment, so I don't want you to get the idea that this is what you'd see in a typical network rack, or that I bought this all myself, because I didn't. That being said, I still want to give you guys a good idea of how all of this equipment works and what it's like to use the UniFi ecosystem. This whole upgrade started when I decided to switch from slow and expensive cable internet to high speed and cheaper fiber internet, going from somewhere around 200 megabits per second to 2 gigabits per second, and my speed tests show actually closer to 2.5. In the future, I would love to get to 10 gigabit per second if they offer it in my area. Right now, I think it's 7. So I reached out to UniFi to see if they would hook me up with some equipment that would make it 10 gigabit capable. A reminder, they didn't tell me anything I should say about this equipment, but I do have links to all of it in the description, and some of those links are affiliate links. If you do decide to pick some of this equipment up, or any of the equipment mentioned in this video, I'll get a little commission at no additional cost to you. Every good build starts with a solid foundation, the rack itself. In this case, I bought a 15U 24-inch deep nave point rack. Now, I've used nave point in the past, but this one is deeper and taller than my last one. The U just means rack units, and each rack unit is 1.75 inches tall. So a 15U rack gives me 15 1.75 inch slots to put equipment in. Different pieces of rack mount equipment take up different amounts of space, so they're referred to in that way units. For example, I have these 2U shelves, which take up 2 rack units. The 24-inch depth of this rack gives more breathing room for airflow and cabling, but also makes room for the deepest piece of equipment that's in this rack, which we'll get to a little later on. The rack comes with 2 sides, top and bottom bars, and a rail frame. Like I've showed previously, the front is made to swing out, giving easy access to the back of your equipment. I did find that it only takes so much weight before that door starts to sag, and in this case, I'm going to have a lot of weight, so I'm not going to be using the swing out feature. It's just part of the rack. NavePoint only makes these racks in black, and I searched around for a white rack, but I couldn't find one worth the price that I wanted to use, so I decided to try painting mine. I sanded the entire frame down and I painted it with an enamel epoxy. Enamel epoxy is durable, resists chips, and leaves a glossy finish that looks like it came straight from the factory in white. It's not as durable as a powder coat, and I ended up doing 2 or 3 coats, and it has scratched away in a few spots, but overall it's been pretty good. One piece of hardware that you always use when you're installing rack mount equipment is the loathed and hated cage nut. You always end up dropping them, they cut your fingers, or they pop out of the cage when you're trying to get the screw in. I wanted something different, and if you saw in my last video, I used rack studs, which are pretty much these plastic studs that pop through the cage, and then these plastic finger nuts that you can screw on, holding your equipment in place. These rack studs are okay for some equipment, but this equipment can get pretty heavy, and I wanted something more durable and more premium. The team at PatchBox sent me their dev mounts, which feature a studded clip that snaps right into the rack rail. You just slide your equipment into the studs and tighten it down with these cherry red anodized aluminum standoff nuts. They look great, feel premium, and make mounting way easier than fiddling with cage nuts and tiny screws. At this point, I want to give you a top-down tour of everything that's in this premium network and smart home rack. At the very top here, you can see the UniFi Dream Machine Pro, which UniFi didn't send me. That was actually part of that original upgrade that I mentioned where I switched over to UniFi and I got hooked on their equipment. It's kind of like an all-in-one network box. It's a router with firewall to control internet traffic and keep your network secure. an Ethernet switch with 8 built-in gigabit Ethernet ports, and it runs the UniFi OS, meaning it's part of that UniFi ecosystem and you can keep adding UniFi devices to it. That allows you to manage all of your Wi-Fi devices, your switches, your access points, your cameras, all in one spot, and it's really nice. It even has this slot for a hard drive if you want to add one, and then you could actually install UniFi Protect, which pretty much makes this thing a network video recorder. That is insane. On the far right here, you can see that it has 2 SFP Plus ports, which are high speed, capable of up to 10 gigabits per second. On the top port here, I've actually brought high speed internet from my ONT via Cat6 cable, and then it goes to an Ethernet to SFP Plus adapter and into the SFP Plus port. In this bottom port, I have an SFP Plus direct attached copper patch cable that connects the next device down. Before I run through the rest of the devices, you can see that I have them what's called daisy chained, where one goes to the next, and then there's another connection from that one to the next one down, etc. And this means that if one of the devices in the stack fails, the rest of them fail. So this isn't something you want to do in a commercial environment, but for residential, I'm not super concerned about it, so I'm leaving it that way because it looks a lot cleaner. The next device down is a USW Pro Max 48, which is a powerful high performance network switch with 48 ports. This thing UniFi sent to me, and it has so many ports, I'll probably never use them all, but I wanted to make sure that I would never run out, and this is the way to do it. It is kind of expensive though, and if you didn't need that many ports, you could pick up the 24 port version as well, or even a smaller switch and just connect it in that way. For a quick run through of these ports, the first 32 of them are capable of 1 gigabit speeds, and the last 16 are super fast, capable of 2.5 gigabit speeds. There are also these 4 SFP Plus ports, which are capable of up to 10 gigabit speeds, which is so cool. It allows you to connect other devices at the highest speed possible. One thing I should mention about SFP Plus ports and SFP Plus connections that I didn't realize is that when you push them in, they actually lock in place, and you actually need to use a little pry tool of some kind to release a lever so that they come out. That's a fun little fact that I learned this time around using SFP Plus connections for the first time. Another feature that I really like with this switch, and you can call this a gimmick if you want, but it's called ether lighting, and it looks really cool. It's pretty much the fact that each of these ports here are RGB lit. In the app, you can specify the color the port should light up based on the connection speed. So pretty much it takes into account the allowed speed of the end device and the allowed speed of the port itself to figure out what is the connection speed, and then it lights up the color that you choose. You can see here the ports that are lit up red, those are fast Ethernet connections. The ones that are lit up white, those are gigabit Ethernet connections, and the ones that are lit up blue are 2.5 gigabit Ethernet connections. Red, white, and blue, baby. On a different device, you'll see some purple connections, and those are 10 gigabit Ethernet connections. You can also set these ports to be a certain color based on what VLAN they're on. If you don't know what VLANs are, it's a virtual local area network, kind of like a separate network within your network. And you can actually have the ports light up the correct color for the VLAN they're on, so you can easily identify the port pretty quickly. For example, maybe I want all my IoT devices on one VLAN and they're all going to be purple, and all the ports that are blue are going to be on my main home VLAN. You can also turn on the locate function for any port, and that's going to flash the port blue so you can easily find that port. And I guess that's cool for a commercial setting where you have a ton of switches and you want to light up a specific port on a specific switch. You can do that easily. So below that network switch is this UniFi brush panel, and this one I bought myself. I was looking around for a brush panel that would fit, and this was just the best color, so I picked it up straight from UniFi. I've been back and forth between patch panel and brush panel, and I've decided that a brush panel is better than a patch panel if you just need clean cable pass through, because it keeps things looking tidy while letting you easily add or move cables later. Patch panels are great if you have a bunch of home runs. You could just leave them all connected, and then you can use patch cables to switch them around on the front of the switch. For me though, I don't have a bunch of home runs, and it is a pain if I want to add a new home run to reach into the back of the patch panel and plug it in on the back. Brush panels avoid that extra work while still maintaining a clean front. Below the brush panel is the USW Pro XG24 PoE, my 10 gigabit PoE switch. This device was also sent to me by Unify, and it is the workhorse of the rack. Since it has PoE, which stands for Power over Ethernet if you didn't know, it's used for supplying connectivity and power to many types of devices. It has 24 ports, 8 of them can do 2.5 gigabit speeds, and 16 of them can do 10 gig. Each of them are PoE+++, which are pretty much PoE ports on steroids. While regular PoE ports can supply up to 15.4 watts per port, these ports can supply up to 90 to 100 watts per port. This can support more power-hungry equipment like large multi-band access points, LED lighting systems, mini PCs, and most importantly, pass-through PoE switches. These are PoE switches that are powered via PoE, and Unify makes a few of those. So if you want to run PoE somewhere and you want to split it off in a couple places, you just power one of those little switches with a PoE+++ port and you're good to go. This whole thing is capable of 720 watts maximum, and like I mentioned, about 90 watts per port. The switch also has 2 super fast fiber uplink slots, 25 gig SFP plus ports to connect other big switches or devices to your network. I have it connected to the previous switch for network connectivity via those SFP ports, and the other one connects to my network attached storage further down in the rack. One other thing, like most switches, these are active PoE ports, meaning that you don't have to use them as PoE ports. It's going to check to see if the device you connect is PoE powered. If not, it's just going to supply connectivity and no power. This gives me a bunch of 10 gigabit ports that I don't have to connect PoE devices to. I can connect any device. So I have my main Windows PC connected to them, even though the PC actually isn't capable of 10 gigabit anyway. But I also have a NAS that'll show later connected to one because that does support 10 gigabit Ethernet. Like the 48 port switch, this switch also has ether lighting capability, which is really cool. But what I didn't mention in that previous switch, I guess I should mention here because it applies to both of them, that even those SFP plus ports, they have these little indicators, and those indicators also support ether lighting, so you'll see their color change as well. Another thing I forgot to mention about this switch is that it is actually the deepest switch in the rack. In fact, it is so deep that it needs support at the back of the rack, otherwise it would hang down and sag and bend the front rail. But because my rack doesn't have any spot in the back for rear supports, I ended up having to 3D print a little shelf bracket and I attached that to the wall behind the rack so that the back of the switch can sit on that shelf, and that worked out pretty well. Underneath the PoE switch is the UNVR, which is the Unified Network Video Recorder. It's pretty much a bank of hard drives that can store and back up video footage, but when you install Unify Protect, their surveillance system, it can do a ton more. It has slots for up to 4 hard drives, an Ethernet port on the back, as well as an SFP plus port for network connectivity. You'll notice that it doesn't have any PoE ports, and that's because we don't connect any PoE cameras directly to it. Those are connected to the network somewhere else on the stack, like the PoE switch, and then the camera feeds are stored to the NVR over the network. You might not think this is great, but I think it's actually really cool that that's how this works because it keeps a really nice clean stack. Unify sent me this NVR as well as 4 G6 turret cameras, which I've installed in my house. And what's cool about these cameras is that they have really advanced AI detection, which I can cover in a separate video if you're interested. Unify Protect, the surveillance system, supports non-Unify cameras as well. So I have my Reolink cameras connected via the OnVIF protocol. So pretty much if you have a camera that supports OnVIF, it's going to work with Unify Protect. You won't get the AI detection features though, as those are built into the cameras, but you can buy a separate AI port from Unify that'll pretty much give your non-Unify camera Unify AI features. Below the UNVR is the UNAS Pro, which Unify also sent to me. And this is their network attached storage system. It's a 2U rack mount NAS that has slots for up to 7 hard drives with a total maximum storage capacity of 168 terabytes, 24 terabytes in each bay. When mounting to the rack, I had to modify the PatchBox dev mounts since right now they don't make any 2U dev mounts, although they have mentioned that they're working on multi-U mounts, so that'll be really cool to see in the future. But all I had to do was snap off one of the studs and then I could use 4 of them for a 2U mount. It's connected to the network via one of the 2 10 gigabit SFP plus ports, which is important for fast storage and retrieval of data. Right now I'm only using 4 of the 7 slots, but I plan to expand to use all of them. That's going to be tough because that's going to mean that I'm going to have to reset up all of the storage. So I'm probably going to have to back up all of the data that's on this NAS onto a different NAS and then add the hard drives and then bring it all back over. So I'll probably just put that off for a long time and then really regret it later on. It runs Unify OS with Unify Drive installed on it. And during setup, you can choose what type of backup you want. After a little research, I chose RAID 5. The NAS allows for basic data storage and retrieval, so I've got it set up with shared folders for YouTube projects and other things, and the performance has been really good. As far as I know, it doesn't allow for running any kind of containers or any kind of containerized environment, meaning you can't run a Jellyfin or a Plex server off this thing. It's basic file storage, but that's what I need it most for. I'll go into my Plex and Jellyfin servers later on. The next piece is this Rackmount power distribution unit from TechMojo. This provides surge protection, centralized power distribution, and plenty of room for chunky adapters for some of my smart home tech. It has 9 of these tails that hang down in the back and allows me to connect all of my smart home devices that are in the rack to those plugs, keeping them back in the rack and not out in view. I showed it in my previous rack video and it was one of the most popular things in that video, so I've kept it here because it is super useful, but I painted it white because I couldn't stand to see that contrast. I still don't like how it looks, but functionally it works pretty well. I'm sure you noticed this little display mounted to the power distribution unit, and it's something that I custom programmed myself. It's an ESP32 CYD or cheap yellow display with a little 3D printed case that I designed myself. It runs ESP Home and pretty much allows me to see a little bit of information about my network as well as controlling the lights around my network rack. Don't worry, I'm going to post a code for this little display on my GitHub, but that 3D printed case is reserved for channel members as a thank you for their support. On the top of that display, you can see a little green bar that shows the internet status. Since I've switched to fiber, I've had a couple outages, so I wanted to make sure that it wasn't the rest of my network, and this is a good way to see that it is the incoming internet that's the problem. Below that are live network traffic speeds for upload and download. In Home Assistant, you can see the upload and download traffic speeds for every single individual port for these unified devices. So for this part of the display, I chose the upload and download speeds for the incoming port to my router, the overall traffic to my fiber ONT. Below that, I have 2 buttons, and you can see here that one of them controls the light in the hallway here, and the other one controls the light above the network rack. And I haven't done any WLED lighting for this rack, but if you guys have any ideas or cool projects that you've seen that mix WLED and a network rack, definitely let me know in the comments. On the next shelf down, I have all of my smart home hubs, and that's why I call this thing a smart home rack, although some people just call them a home lab, I guess. And yeah, I do have quite a few hubs, but not as many as I did in my last video. I have all the hubs sitting on this 2U shelf, and you can see that there are a lot more than you should see in a typical setup, especially if someone is running Home Assistant, but most of these are for testing purposes. I keep all of the hubs neatly organized with Ethernet connections to as many of them as possible. The first one is the Home Assistant Green. This is just a test instance of Home Assistant. The next is the Philips Hue Hub, which is mainly for testing, and I recently just added this, but haven't used it a whole lot. Next is the SmartThings Hub. This was my first true smart home hub, but I didn't have it very long before I switched over to Home Assistant and haven't looked back. I keep it around for testing. Next, we have the Aqara M2 Hub, which I keep around for one single device that I can't wait to get rid of so that I don't need it, but it's a device that works best with their hub, but the HomeKit controller connection that adds it to Home Assistant seems really laggy and unresponsive, and honestly, it's driving my wife nuts, so it's going to be gone soon. I may keep it around for testing purposes, we'll see. Next, we have the Habitat Hub, which I also use for testing purposes. I would never use it as a main driver for my smart home as it's so feature poor. I'd use SmartThings over that. And next, we have the EcoWit Hub, which is for my EcoWit weather station. And that's the best weather station I've ever used. I absolutely love it. I made a whole video on that one. Definitely check it out. Lastly, and best of all, is my Home Assistant Blue, which is the rock solid backbone of my smart home. And I make sure that everything runs through that if possible. If you don't know about Home Assistant, then you need to watch some more of my older videos, but this thing is amazing. It's what really started me on my YouTube journey. when I switch to this thing from SmartThings. Since we're talking hubs, I also do have a Home Assistant yellow hub that I have mounted in a picture frame in my office, and that's also for testing, and I think it looks cool as a piece of art that's also functional. So that is a lot of smart home hubs, but it's because when I do these big comparison videos, I'm trying to test them across all of the different ecosystems. So anytime they have their own hub, I want to test it with that. Having them all on one shelf though makes sense because it keeps them in a dedicated spot, and swapping hubs out for different hubs if I need to is really easy when they're all organized. At the very bottom, I have another 2U shelf, although the space takes up a lot more than 2U, and that is my NAS shelf. It holds my Synology DS923 Plus, which I use for my Plex and Jellyfin media servers. And this thing has a 10 gigabit Ethernet connection, so I think I'm just going to leave Plex and Jellyfin right on here as it's blazing fast and does everything I need it to. Next to that, I have the TerraMaster F4 424, which is the 4-bay NAS that I've been using for my YouTube projects, but I'm slowly moving things off of that to my Unified NAS. But I think I'll keep them synced, so to speak, so that when I go to add more drives to my Unified NAS, I can just copy the backup from the TerraMaster drive to the Unified NAS. Lastly, I have the TerraMaster F8 SSD Plus, which is a NAS made up of only M.2 NVMe storage sticks. This makes for some pretty fast file storage, and right now I store a lot of my channel art and thumbnails and graphics and things like that on there. I also store files and things like that for my Etsy store there. Like I mentioned, on my Synology NAS, I have both a Plex and a Jellyfin server on there, and it's got a 10 gigabit connection. You might be wondering why I have both, and that's because I'm moving away from Plex and to Jellyfin. I just got to sort out the remote connection because Plex is starting to charge for some of the basic features, and it's really killing the vibe. I want to move over to Jellyfin. Tucked away in the back of this 24-inch deep rack is my UPS, which is the UPS I had in my last update video on the rack, a Golden Mate 1000 volt amp UPS. This thing has been rock solid since I installed it in my rack update video. But there were some comments about the fan being really loud, and now that I have a lot more power-hungry devices feeding off of it, the fan is constantly running and it's really loud. It might be ruining the audio for this video right now, so I got to do something to move away from that. So if you guys have suggestions for a good UPS, let me know in the comments. I'm looking for a 1500 volt amp unit. I think that'll be suitable for the rest of this. If you look at the display on this thing, you can see that I'm using around 300 watts, which is a lot of power. So I would love to get like a solar panel system that could offset that amount of power that I'm using. Definitely let me know if you guys have any suggestions for that, or if you have any videos that you could recommend that I could follow, because that's something that I kind of want to do sooner rather than later. This Golden Mate UPS is actually plugged into a Third Reality smart plug that has power monitoring, and that smart plug is connected via Zigbee through Home Assistant. Their smart plug actually has 2 sockets on it, and they can be individually monitored in Home Assistant. So since my UPS isn't smart and I can't get that data in Home Assistant, this smart plug allows me to at least get the overall power usage of the rack where I can monitor it. Now let's talk about Wi-Fi. If you don't know much about the Unified Dream Machine Pro, which is my router, then you might not know that it doesn't have any wireless radio itself, and you have to actually add your own access points. Previously, I had purchased some Unified U6 Plus access points, 2 of them actually, and I had placed them in a couple different spots in my house, but Unify was kind enough to send me 3 U7 Pro XG access points, which are a game changer. They support Wi-Fi 7, 10 gigabit uplinks, and they finally bring my wireless speeds in line with the wired backbone. They're PoE powered, so you just plug them into one of the 10 gigabit Ethernet ports, and then you can put them wherever you want, mounting them to the ceiling with a really nice design. They are kind of warm, which is crazy, but they do use quite a bit of power, and that's the benefit of having higher powered PoE ports on your PoE switch. Anyway, with those 3 access points, I have full coverage on my house with no issues, and I'm thinking of taking one of the U6 Pluses and actually running a cable out to my shed, so I even have Wi-Fi out there, because why not? The cool thing with the Unify system is if you want to expand your coverage, just add another access point. And they actually even make outdoor access points made for, outdoor weather. So you could put one on your patio or something like that and extend your coverage out there. You could just keep adding them, and that is so cool. For all of the cabling in my rack, I just use Cat 6 cables. I'll leave links to those in the description. And since they have those clear connectors on them, the ether lighting looks really cool, lighting them up kind of in a fiber optic way. And I think those cables combined with the brush panel actually look really good, and the whole unit looks really nice. Now, I've obviously gone the premium route, and this isn't going to be feasible for most people. I understand that getting free equipment is a huge deal, but I hope it gives you an idea of what a premium rack could look like, and maybe gives you some ideas for some things you want to add to your rack if you see benefits. Maybe you're loaded and you can afford a full stack like this, and if you can, I say go for it. It is so much fun, and I'm barely scratching the surface of what this is capable of. And if you want to see more videos about the UniFi system, please let me know in the comments. If I wasn't given any of this equipment, there's one piece of equipment I would 100% still buy, and that is the UniFi Dream Machine Pro. I'd buy it again in a heartbeat because this thing is what brought me into the UniFi system, and you can add anything. You don't have to add UniFi switches and APs. You can add whatever you want, but it's kind of like Apple in the sense that when you start adding their products, things just work and so well. The other thing I like with UniFi is that they don't require subscriptions. They rely on their hardware selling themselves. So when you buy the UNVR, you install UniFi Protect, you have all of the benefits of UniFi Protect. You install UDrive, you have all the benefits of that system. You don't have to pay extra or a subscription for all of the awesome features that their system comes with. Now, you might be typing in the comments right now, why do you have so many ports? You're not even using half of them. And the reality is that that's called future-proofing. I don't have to buy another switch, maybe ever, because I may never use all those ports. But if I got a 24-port switch, I might use them all, and then I gotta go and get another switch. So it's a good idea to get a switch with more ports than you think you might need, because I'm telling you, you will keep adding ports, especially if you're going down the IoT rabbit hole that I'm down. If you guys want to see what a full stack UniFi system on a budget would look like, let me know in the comments. And I know that UniFi and budget are two words that don't necessarily belong in the same sentence, but there are ways of getting a lot of these same features on a much smaller budget. Anyway, huge thanks obviously to Ubiquiti for sending me all of this equipment so that I can show you guys this stuff. And if you want me to go over the UniFi Home Assistant integration or the UniFi Protect Home Assistant integration, let me know in the comments and I can make a separate dedicated video about that. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll see ya.